So after sinking a heap of time into Ghost of Yōtei over these past few weeks, I've realized just how deep this game goes. There is a lot more to it than I initially thought, and that means there is still plenty of new things that I'm learning as I go. And so today I thought I'd cover some tips and tricks that I wish I knew a little bit sooner when it comes to Ghost of Yōtei. Now the first one doesn't really affect the gameplay all that much, but it is just a really nice quality of life change. I'm sure you guys will have noticed that every time you get on your horse in this game, it will add the sort of letterbox feeling to the game where the black bars come down from the top and up from the bottom to give it that more cinematic feeling. And although it does look really nice and it makes the game definitely feel a little bit more cinematic, for me personally, I don't love when the gameplay elements of any game have that letterbox feeling. And after looking through all of the settings and everything, trying to find a way to turn this off, I couldn't find anything to remove this effect. Now it turns out that you can actually just remove this by pressing R3. That will just instantly remove those black bars, putting you back into the regular aspect ratio that you get throughout all of the rest of the gameplay. And another cool tip as well is that if you then press R3 again, it will actually put you into the perspective that you had in Ghost of Yōtei, where the camera is a little bit closer to the character, which might be a nice change for any of you who are big fans of Ghost of Tsushima. Now, the next tip I have is actually also to do with the horse as well. And this is that there are multiple different ways in order to make the horse run faster. Now, it explains it pretty early in the game that if you run through the flower streams that you'll find throughout the open world, that obviously makes you go a lot faster, and it does explain that almost instantly as soon as you start playing the game. Despite that though, there are actually 4 different ways that you can also get the same effect that, at least as far as I know, this game does not explain, and these are honestly more common than those flower streams. Now the first one is that if you see a pack of horses, if you just run up to that pack of horses, they will essentially start galloping along with you, and that will make you run faster. You can also then direct them wherever you're going, and that means that that speed boost is actually going to sort of follow you along, whereas obviously the flower streams, they are set in place. I've also noticed that when you go through a flock of birds out in the world, that same effect will happen, albeit this one is a little bit faster, meaning it runs out a lot quicker than those other two. Probably the most common way is actually just running through any shallow water in the world. If you see water, you essentially want to be using that to your advantage because it will make you a lot quicker. And lastly, even if you just collect plants throughout the world, if you run up to it and collect it while you're riding along, even that will give you a slight speed boost as well. So be sure to make the most of all of those. The flower streams aren't the only way to do this, and it is a little bit strange actually that the game doesn't really tell you this. Now the next tip I've got is actually to do with some stealthy gameplay. And this is if you're ever in a pinch and need to desperately distract an enemy. Now, oftentimes you will find things throughout the world to just pick up and throw. But if you're ever in a situation where there's nothing to throw and you desperately need to distract someone, if you actually just drink your sake, which is done by holding down on the D-pad, that will not only obviously refill your spirit slots, which in itself is a very handy tip that is essentially what the sake is designed for, but once you drink it, it will actually then drop the empty sake jar to the ground, and you can then pick that up and use it to distract enemies in a pinch. If you have the right techniques as well, you can even use this when your wolf companion is nearby, and when you hit an enemy with the sake jar or essentially any item, the wolf will then attack that enemy and pretty much instantly kill them. So make the most of that. It's something that the game doesn't really tell you. It obviously tells you you can use it to refill your spirit slots, but it doesn't explain that it can also be very handy after that is finished. Now, before we go any further, today's video is brought to you guys by Aniba, an awesome digital marketplace for gamers with over 40,000 digital products across PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. You can find awesome deals on any title, old or new, from AAA titles to indie games. There is something there for everyone. And with a very high Trustpilot score and 24/7 live customer service support, you know they've got your back to make sure everything runs smoothly with any new games you purchase. Check out the links in the description and the pinned comment to find yourself some great deals on gaming, and a big thank you to Aniba for sponsoring today's video. Now the next tip I've got here is one that the game does kind of explain, but it doesn't really explain the depth at which you can use this to. This is the loadout system in this game. Now, initially I kind of saw this and thought, okay, it's just going to be an easy way to have different outfits and stuff like that so that I can change throughout them, but you can actually use this very effectively when it comes to certain types of playstyles. What I would recommend is actually setting up multiple loadouts where each loadout is essentially focused on a specific playstyle. So for me, I have one loadout that is essentially to do with stealth. All of the charms and all of the armor and stuff that I use is stuff that is heavily focused on stealth and giving me bonuses in that sort of gameplay. I then have another loadout that is focused more on just actual head-to-head combat, giving me the most damage reduction I can have and all of those sorts of things. And then I've got another loadout that is actually to do with exploration, essentially helping find more items and helping guide your way through the world. So if you have your loadout set up like that, you can then quickly change throughout them at will. This isn't something that you have to go and rest at your camp and change your outfit. You can literally do it whenever you want. You can even do it in the middle of combat, so long as you aren't like actively swinging your sword. And so this is absolutely overpowered. If you're using your stealth loadout, for example, but then someone notices you and you're no longer in stealth, well, you could just instantly switch to your heavy loadout, which is focused on combat. And although it slightly breaks the realism of the game, it is a very effective way at dealing with enemies. Now, the next tip I have is actually a setting, and this is to do with the bamboo strikes. Now, for me personally, I really enjoy the bamboo strikes, but I'm not going to lie, there are some that are absolutely diabolical, where it will make you press just absolutely obscure buttons that are so hard to actually chain with the rest of the buttons. If there's any bamboo strikes that you guys are getting really frustrated by, there is a setting that you can see here that essentially removes the time aspect of the bamboo strike. So you do still have to press all of the buttons in the right order, but it essentially just removes the timer. And so you can do this as fast or as slow as you want. And as long as you hit them in the right order, which without the timer is very easy to do, this will just remove that frustration, especially when it comes to those really, really hard combinations. Now, the next tip I've got here is to do with fire arrows, and this is the fact that you can actually use them in the tall grass where you can usually hide and stay stealthy to actually create pretty much a fire trap and deal a heap of damage to nearby enemies. Now, you obviously need to get fire arrows, and if you don't know how to do that, all you need to do is essentially buy the first bow. It is the sort of smaller bow, not the long bow, and then you need to upgrade that to, I believe, the 3rd tier, and at that point you will unlock fire arrows. Now, from there, all you need to do is just shoot a fire arrow at any of the tall grass in the world, and it will pretty much light the entire thing on fire. So if you've sort of drawn some enemies into that grass and then you hit it, they are going to take a lot of damage, and this is a very effective way of doing crowd control. Now, last but not least, this tip is to do with the wolf, and something that I didn't know for quite some time in this game is that you can actually summon the wolf rather than it just being at random. Initially, it seemed like this was just kind of part of the story or only in certain locations, but no, you can essentially summon your wolf companion at any point. And to do this, all you need to do is do 4 wolf dens, which you'll find throughout the world. And once you've completed those wolf dens, you will eventually learn the song of the wolf that you can then play in order to summon your wolf companion who will fight alongside you. So this is really helpful in camps, for example, where there's obviously a lot of enemies. The wolf can be pretty beastly, and like I mentioned earlier, there are some techniques that can really upgrade the wolf companion combat as well, to where if you throw an item at an enemy, they will borderline instant kill that enemy, and even help a lot with the standoffs in the game as well. So make the most of this. Like I said, I did not know this was possible for quite some time, but once you unlock it, it is a very fun mechanic to make the most of. But that is it for 7 things I wish I knew sooner in Ghost of Yōtei, guys. If there's anything you think I missed, be sure to leave a comment down below. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and we'll catch you all in the next one.